The arrival of the Turnok. The Interstellar Council chamber was a grand structure, vast, towering, a monument to the unity of the galaxy's greatest species. At its center, beneath the gleaming banners of 100 worlds, stood the newest arrivals, the Turnok, a species feared across the stars. The Turnok were giants, their hulking forms clad in ceremonial battle armor. Their skin, thick and ridged like plated stone, bore the scars of centuries of conquest. Their leader, High Warlord Kron, stood at the center, surveying the gathered species with contempt. "We are the mightiest," Kron declared, his deep voice rattling the chamber. "We have conquered more worlds than any of you can count. We stand at the peak of the galactic order, and it is time the weak submit to the strong." Murmurs rippled through the council. The VA Curie, with their elegant silver exoskeletons, exchanged uneasy glances. The Zolthar, reptilian strategists known for their cold pragmatism, remained silent, calculating. Even the mighty Rendari, warlike but disciplined, tensed at the audacity of the demand. The humans, however, said nothing. They sat in the back of the chamber, as they always did. Their delegation was small, just 3 representatives. They did not protest, did not challenge. They simply observed. Kron's gaze swept the room, narrowing when he spotted the humans. A sneer formed on his cracked lips. "You, humans," he rumbled. "You hide in the back, while other species stand with pride. Do you fear us so much?" The lead human, a calm and weathered figure named Ambassador Daniel Graves, leaned forward slightly. His face betrayed no emotion. "We sit where we choose," he said simply. Kron barked a laugh. That is the response of prey. A few species chuckled, some nervously, others in agreement. The humans had always been an anomaly, a young race, barely a century into spaceflight, yet oddly respected by even the war-hardened Rendari. They were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced. Yet they endured. Still, to the Turnok, endurance was nothing. Strength was everything. "We offer you all a challenge," Kron continued, voice dripping with arrogance. "We will prove, once and for all, that we are the dominant species. A combat trial, 1 against 1. If any of you can defeat a Turnok warrior, we will reconsider our demands." Silence fell. The council species hesitated. The VA Curie were graceful but fragile. The Zolthar, cunning but not physical combatants. Even the Rendari, fierce in battle, knew better than to challenge a Turnok in single combat. Still, the human said nothing. Kron smirked. As expected. No one dares. You will bow before us soon enough." Then a voice from the back, calm, measured. "I'll fight." The council turned. A single human stood. Captain Elias Rourke. A test of strength. A hush fell over the chamber as Captain Elias Rourke stepped forward. He moved with deliberate ease, his expression unreadable. The humans had remained silent until now, sitting at the back, watching. But now they acted. Kron's sneer deepened. "You? A single human dares to stand against the Turnok." Elias met the warlord's gaze without flinching. "You wanted a challenger. Here I am." The council members exchanged uncertain glances. The VA Curie ambassador clicked his mandibles in concern. The Zolthar delegate muttered something to an aide, likely calculating Elias's survival odds. Grim, no doubt. Even the war-hardened Rendari seemed uneasy. "Very well," Kron growled. He turned his right and gestured. Rothak stepped forward. A massive Turnok warrior strode onto the combat platform at the center of the chamber. Nearly 9 feet tall, covered in thick, plated skin, Rothak exuded raw, primal power. His fists, the size of human skulls, flexed in anticipation. He towered over Elias. The human merely rolled his shoulders, eyes cool and unreadable. "This will be quick," Rothak snarled, cracking his knuckles. Elias didn't respond. He simply watched. A chime sounded, signaling the start of the fight. Rothak moved first, lunging forward with terrifying speed for his size, a hammering blow aimed to end the fight in a single strike. Elias sidestepped. The massive fist sailed past him, slamming into the ground with a thunderous crack. The impact left a dent in the reinforced platform. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Rodhack snarled and swung again. Another dodge. Again and again. Elias was never there when the blows landed. The Turnok warrior grew frustrated. He had fought countless battles, crushed foes twice Elias's size. And yet, this human moved like smoke, always out of reach, never meeting force with force. Then Elias struck back. A precise kick to the inside of Rodhack's knee. A sharp elbow to the side of his ribs, right where the thickest plating of Turnok's skin was thinnest. A quick retreat before Rodhack could counter. The council watched in stunned silence. The Turnok didn't understand. Combat, to them, was about brute strength, overpowering, smashing, crushing. But humans? Humans had learned war the hard way, through thousands of years of fighting, adapting, and surviving. Elias was studying his enemy, watching for weaknesses, exploiting openings with ruthless efficiency. Rodhack roared, charging in desperation. Elias stepped aside at the last second, twisting his opponent's momentum against him. The giant Turnok stumbled, off balance. That was all Elias needed. With a final, devastating strike to the back of the Turnok's neck, Elias finished it. Rodhack collapsed, unmoving, defeated. Silence. Then, Elias turned and walked back to his seat, to the back of the chamber. Only then did he finally speak. "You hit hard," he said over his shoulder. "But you fight dumb." The lesson of the back seat. The silence in the council chamber stretched long after Rodhack's massive form hit the ground. His chest still rose and fell. He was alive, but unconscious. Defeated. No one spoke. Not the VA Kiri, who had once believed humans were tactically clever but physically unimpressive. Not the Zolthar, whose cold logic had failed to predict this outcome. Not even the Rindari, warriors in their own right, who now studied the human with newfound respect. And certainly not the Turnok. High Warlord Kron's eyes burned with disbelief. His species had never known true defeat in single combat, not against any council race. Yet now, before the gathered leaders of the galaxy, a human had done the impossible. Elias Rourke, seemingly unimpressed with himself, sat back down. In the back of the chamber, Kron stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "What trickery is this?" "No trick," Elias replied simply. Kron's fists clenched. "Rodhack is one of my finest warriors. He could crush 10 of you in a fair fight." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Then it's a good thing I don't fight fair." The warlord's snarl was audible. "You are cowards. You dodge. You evade. You strike from weakness, not from strength." Elias sighed, leaning back in his chair. He glanced at Ambassador Graves, who gave him a small nod, permission to speak freely. So Elias stood again. This time, he addressed the entire chamber. "You think I fought unfairly? That I was weak because I didn't take your hits head on?" His voice was calm, measured, but beneath it was steel. "That's the difference between us and you." Kron's nostrils flared, but he remained silent. Elias took a step forward. "You Turnok believe strength is everything. That sitting at the front of the room, puffing your chests, makes you the dominant species. That's why you see us, sitting quietly in the back, and assume we're beneath you." He let the words sink in. "But you don't understand why we sit here. Why humans always sit in the back." The council listened. Elias continued. "When you're in a war zone, the first ones through the door, they're usually the first to die. The ones standing in the open, the first to fall. The loudest, the boldest, the easiest to target." His eyes locked on Kron's. "We sit in the back because that's where the survivors sit. The planners, the strategists, the ones who watch, who wait, who strike when the moment is right." Kron's expression faltered, just for a second. Elias stepped past him, gesturing to Rodhack's unconscious form. "You wanted proof of dominance? Here it is." He looked at the other species in the room. "We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. But we win, because we fight smart." Then he turned, walked back to his seat, and sat down. At the back of the room. And this time, everyone understood why. The Turnok learned the truth. High Warlord Kron stood motionless, fists clenched at his sides. His warrior had fallen. His challenge had been answered, Not with brute force, but with something far deadlier. Precision, tactics, control. The chamber remained silent, the weight of Elias Rourke's words pressing down on every species present. Humans always sat in the back, because that's where the real threats waited. Kron's jaw tightened. "This proves nothing," he growled, though his voice lacked its earlier arrogance. "You do not dominate the strong. You avoid them. You skulk in the shadows like prey." Elias gave a small, knowing smile. "You're half right," he said. "We avoid fights we don't need to win. But when we do fight," his eyes flicked toward Rothack's unconscious body, "we don't lose." The statement hung in the air like a blade. The VA Curie ambassador, ever the diplomat, cleared his throat. Perhaps this moment should serve as a recalibration of expectations. It seems humanity is more formidable than we have previously considered. The Zolthar delegate gave a slow, calculating nod. Their methods are effective. The Rendari, warriors themselves, looked at Elias with something new, respect. But Kron? He was still struggling to accept what had happened. His species had ruled by fear, by overwhelming power. The idea that a smaller, weaker species could outmaneuver them, outthink them, was unacceptable. And yet, the evidence was right in front of him. Kron exhaled, his rage slowly cooling into something else. Caution, wariness, recognition. "You fight differently," he admitted at last. "Not with power, but with patience." Elias gave a slight nod. Kron's gaze swept over the humans again, truly seeing them now. Not as weaklings, not as cowards, but as hunters. "I have no desire to spill the blood of my warriors needlessly," the warlord finally said, though there was a bitter edge to his voice. "We will not pursue domination today." A subtle shift rippled through the chamber. The council members exhaled. The threat of war, of conquest, had passed. Elias remained quiet as Kron turned and strode toward the exit, his warriors following in silence. Before leaving, the warlord paused. Without turning back, he spoke one final time. "I will remember this, human." Elias only smiled. "I know." And then the Turnok were gone. The council chambers remained still for a long moment. Then, finally, Ambassador Graves leaned toward Elias. "Well done," he murmured. Elias gave a small shrug, as if it had been inevitable. Then, with the same quiet confidence he had shown since the beginning, he leaned back into his chair, at the back of the room. And this time, no one questioned why.